Today I'm going to attempt to answer one of the common questions I get, and that is how much insulin to give when looking at a pile of food. I get this question most often from new type 1 diabetics or parents of new type 1 diabetics or family and friends with not much experience with type 1 diabetes. So luckily or unluckily, however you want to look at it, Derek, my husband, is a type 1 diabetic, and he's had type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. So when we got the news about Jovee being diabetic, it was absolutely devastating, but we didn't have the learning curve of trying to understand why or how much insulin to give. So that part did make it a little bit easier during the transition. So one thing to keep in mind when dealing with a type 1 diabetic, whether it's yourself or someone that you care for, is that you will no longer look at food carefree anymore. You will start to look at piles of food as carbohydrates that need to have insulin given for them. So accept that, because that is your new life now. Also, I'm going to demonstrate how we measure food in our house, or how we've done it in the past. Please keep in mind that when Jovee was diagnosed, she was 4 years old and only 29 pounds. So we were overly cautious. We weighed every single gram of food for her. And we did that because at 29 pounds, every single unit of insulin, or half unit or tenth of a unit of insulin, was significant for her. So we had to measure her food to the nearest gram. Now that she is 6 years old and weighs nearly 50 pounds, we can be a little bit more lenient, or we can kind of round up and round down. So we do that a little bit more now, but the way that I'm going to show you is going to be very precise. So please keep that in mind. You will also start to learn what different foods are and how many carbs are in different types of foods. So for example, you will weigh an apple now, and you will find that it weighs, let's say, 200 grams. You will start to learn that an apple might be, 20 carbs, let's say. So you'll be able to gain that experience. That will come with time, I promise. I promise. Also, don't be terrified about how to calculate carbohydrates. Remember, as I'm sure your doctor told you, you have to give insulin for carbohydrates. That is carbohydrates minus fiber. So most packaged foods have that. Most restaurants have that. And if you're buying food like produce or other unpackaged foods, you can find a lot of that information online at websites like Chronometer or nutritionfacts.com or those kinds of websites. So one more thing to keep in mind, having a routine and having meal plans prepared ahead of time will work in your favor. You won't become so overwhelmed. So let's say every breakfast you have, let's say 4 different options, and you have those options day after day. You will learn that breakfast is, let's say, 30 carbs or 45 carbs. You'll learn those, so that will come with time. So meal planning and routines do help. Hopefully, as you're learning this transition, it does become easier for you. So I'm going to demonstrate how we calculate how much insulin to give Jovee. So enjoy. The question is, how do you convert this pile of food, or any pile of food, into units of insulin? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut up all the fruit, and I will show you what to do next. Okay, so now that we've prepared our food, we're going to measure it. We have to measure every item separately because every food has different carb ratios. So we have a scale that we keep at home here. We also have a scale in Jovee's backpack that goes with her everywhere she goes, so we can always measure food for her there. So we put our container on top. We're actually going out, so she'll be eating breakfast and lunch out today, but we'll still measure it just the same. So we, of course, turn the scale on, and so it's going to be tared out at 0, so it doesn't, of course, it doesn't weigh the container that's being used, so whether it's a bowl or a plate or whatnot. So for simplicity's sake, if you're starting out doing this, it might be easier to do things in increments of 100 grams. The number on the bottom is grams. So right now we're looking at 104 grams of mango. But for simplicity's sake, it might be easier to, at the time when you're starting this, to just do everything in 100-gram increments. That right there might be close enough. But in this case, this container right here that you're looking at of mango is 101 grams. So what we do is we have a cheat sheet over here on the refrigerator. We also carry one of these wherever we go that tells us all of the common foods that Jovee eats. So you can see mango right up here, right there. I've got mango on my finger. You got mango right here. This number right here, that 0.133, is actually the percentage of carbohydrates, total carbohydrates less fiber, per gram of food. So for 1 gram of mango, there is 13.3% of carbohydrates that we have to give insulin for. So if you do of increments of 100 grams, then we can see that in 100 grams of mango, it would be 13.3 carbohydrates. So we would give her insulin for 13.3 carbohydrates. In this case, I'm not going to give her 101 grams. I'm going to give her more. I'll give her maybe 120 or something like that. Because this is where most of her calorie source is going to come from for breakfast, is mangoes. So I save about half for lunch as well. So we're going to give her about 166 grams of mango. I'm going to rinse my hand off here, show you on the calculator. So 166 grams of mango is what Jovee is going to be eating for breakfast. So we go over here and we type in, of course we have a calculator. We also carry one of these in her backpack, so we have calculators all over. So 166 times, and we look down here and we see that mango, right here, mango is 0.133. So it's 166 times 0.133 equals 22.07. So we add that. Of course, we carry a pen and a marker everywhere we go. So 22.078. That's what she has for mango. So I will do the rest. I will do this exact same step for all of the other food there. So the strawberries, the tomatoes, and the blueberries. I'll do all that for, I'll do the same step for those fruits as well, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we've measured all the rest of the food. So what we have in here is we started off with mango, remember? We started off with mango, then I threw in some tomatoes, then I threw in some strawberries, and then I polished it off with some blueberries. So what I did was I actually did breakfast and lunch at the same time. What I try to do is do the exact same amount of food, the same weight of food per meal if Jovee and I are going out, because it makes making breakfast so much easier. I only have to calculate it once, and it applies for both. So that's the way we do it, but I'm sure everybody has their own methods. So let me show you what we found. We already calculated the mango, remember? We already calculated the mango. Then we had 45 grams of tomato. I know that tomato is 0.026% carbs. So tomato, 0.026. So we had 45 grams of tomato. We multiplied it by 0.026 and we come up with 1.17. With strawberries, we had 138 grams. I know that strawberries, that ratio is 0.056. So we come up with 7.728 carbohydrate. Then I polished it off with 100 grams of blueberries. I know that blueberries is 0.12. So I took your 100 grams, multiplied it by 0.12, and I come up with 12 grams of carbohydrates. So I add them all up together, and I come up with, oh, that's not the right number. I come up with 42 or 43, however you want to round that. But that means that each one of those containers right there is 42 or 43 carbs. So we're going to enter that number. So I write it down. I always round low. So 42 is the total carbohydrates. So I'm going to give her insulin for 42 carbs. I will also give her any insulin if she needs it for if her blood sugar is running a little bit high. So I will show you that as soon as Jovee tests her blood here in a moment. So Jovee's testing her blood for her breakfast right now. She does this for every single meal. Anytime we're going to give her insulin or anytime we make any type of correction, we test her blood. So right now, what was your blood sugar?
132.
Her blood sugar was 132. That's her actual blood sugar. So she's going to go throw away her little components. And then we're going to, her remote is right here. This is the remote for her pump. So we're going to wake up her pump. And remember, it was 132. That's what our number was. This is what it says. It says basal rate of 0.75 units per hour. She's got total insulin in her fanny pack of 47 units. So that doesn't really apply for what we're doing. What we are trying to do is give her a bolus. A bolus is like a one quick shot, I guess, one quick injection, so to speak, of insulin. For every meal, for every correction, we give her a bolus. Thank you, Jovee. She turned the lights off for me. So easy carb, we're going to be giving her insulin for her carbohydrates. So it comes up with this screen. It's saying last blood glucose is more than 15 minutes old, retest, or enter new blood glucose. So I will confirm that. Carbs, remember, we had 42 carbs for her breakfast. So I'm going to enter that here. Almost there. 42 carbs. This insulin to carb ratio, this is saying 1 unit for every 30 grams of carbohydrates. She's having more than 30 grams. So I would expect that the pump would ask or would request to give her more than 1 unit, a ratio of that. So maybe 1.3 to that effect, something in there. Now I'm going to add her blood glucose. Her blood glucose, she just tested it, was, what was it, Jovee?
132.
132. Thank you, my dear. Not too fast. 132. So her target is 120. So it's slightly over. It's 12 points over. I don't think the pump is going to give her a correction of that. So I'm going to go here and click show result. And this is what it says. The carbs. So it's suggesting to give 1.4 units of insulin because of her 42 grams of carbs. And insulin, blood glucose, it's not suggesting to give any correction because her blood sugar, again, was only 12 points over her target, which is awesome. And her insulin on board, she doesn't have any insulin on board right now, meaning that we didn't give her a correction within the past 3 hours. She just has her normal basal rate going in all the time. But it's suggesting to give a total of 1.4 units for this meal. And I'm going to take that suggestion and put that in here into her units, or into her pump. Whoa, way too fast. Okay, then I'm going to click go, and it's going to show this little screen that says, what does it say? It says delivering. Press any function button to cancel, and Jovee will tell me if it's going in or not. Jovee,
Yeah.
is the insulin going in? It's going in. Okay, cool. So it's delivering. It's almost done, and delivered. So Jovee now has insulin for breakfast. Yay! With her insulin for breakfast, her body is a little bit more insulin resistant. So we wait a bit. We actually wait. We have this little cheat sheet over here, coincidentally, where it said blood glucose divided by 10. So her blood glucose was 132. You divide it by 10 and you get about 13 minutes. So Jovee will be able to eat breakfast in approximately 13 minutes, depending on what her Dexcom says. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully that answered some question. That only really helps with measuring carbs and entering carbs for diabetes. It doesn't actually answer anything about how to correct or when to correct or anything like that. But hopefully that answered something. Have a good day.